Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at The Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, a beacon of self-sustaining clean energy.
Today we are talking about Minute 24, which begins with Steve's exit and ends with Christmas. Back on the show, it's author Ryan Dalton. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, guys.
We've had Hulk, we've had Black Widow, we've had Steve Rogers, and now we get Tony Stark.
Wow.
Yes, this was by design. This is why I chose these minutes.
Smart man.
So we talked for 2 entire minutes worth about your love of Hulk, only to find out at the very end of our last minute with you that you like Cap more. So I got to start here with this question. Where does Tony fall?
So this isn't a bait and switch. I'm not going to be like, hey, by the way, Iron Man's my favorite. I just figured it out. I just in between minutes read another comic. My view on comic Tony Stark and comic Iron Man before the movie started to come out, I always thought he was cool. He was fun, but but he didn't resonate with me in the same way that Cap or Hulk did. He was fun. Always I liked some of the runs. Like I thought the Extremis comic one was really, really good. There was some compelling stuff, but he just to me was a little more fun and didn't have quite the same depth of character that I enjoyed with Cap and with Hulk. But these movies were really great for reintroducing Iron Man to me. The way that Robert Downey Jr. portrayed him and everything really, I think, added a dimension to him that didn't exist so much in the comics. And I think has done a lot of good for Tony on all fronts, both in the movies and in how he's portrayed in the comics. So he actually, I feel like to me has been elevated as a character since these started.
Though I will say, as a fan of some of those comics, the 70s run where he's an alcoholic and like really falls hard with that and ends up homeless and everything, like there are some pretty dark periods in his life in the comics that they touch on briefly in the films, but I did really enjoy that stretch of Tony's line.
Yeah, that's true. When I started reading the comics, I didn't really read the Demon in the Bottle series or anything like that. So it could be that I just read the stuff that was, that didn't hit the deeper stuff for him.
Yeah. Before we get into Tony, though, was there any last thoughts about the interaction between Steve and Nick? We do get Steve's response to Nick's line from yesterday's minute when Nick asks him if there's anything you can tell us about the Tesseract that we ought to know. And then Steve responds here at the start of this minute, "You should have left it in the ocean." And I guess that goes a little bit to our conversation yesterday, but any final thoughts on this conversation?
Well, again, it keeps going back to what I say I admire about this movie. Its economy and how basically just with that one line, Steve, with that little bit of dread in his voice, sums up his whole experience with the Tesseract. And it's enough, especially, if you're my friend who's never seen a Marvel movie and comes in and is watching Avengers, that one line would tell you, oh, this thing is bad news because Captain America says it's bad news.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done.
That's a really good point. That line plays almost better as a mystery thriller if you haven't seen the rest of the movies.
Right, yeah.
You should have left it at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's good.
Of course, we start the film with the Tesseract and the other talking about it and that whole crazy intro and everything. So you're already like, what is this crazy thing? Yeah.
No, it's not a mystery thriller.
Yeah. All right, so we cut in to an underwater scene. It's actually so dark that it's really hard to tell where we are, except that we hear underwater sounds. So we kind of get that sense that we're underwater. And then we see some seaweed growing on what looks like an underwater power line. And then, hey, I recognize that hand. It's Iron Man. And so now we have seen in this film so far Hawkeye first, then Black Widow, then Hulk, then Captain America, and now Iron Man. Thor is the only one we're missing. We'll have to wait a little longer for him. But we're getting all these pieces in place. It's nice to see. We're in minute 24. So in the first half hour of the film, we have introduced 5/6 of our team. And to your point, Ryan, about kind of economy, I think that they're doing it in a way where everybody's given a little bit of a moment to kind of, Hawkeye can be argued, but still, they're all given a moment as far as setting up who this character is.
And one that doesn't feel that rushed. It's well done. It's like everyone gets a little vignette. You're right. It's a satisfying moment. And so because all of their intros have a beginning, middle, and end, it doesn't feel like we're rushing too much from one to the other. Every scene still has a purpose that's above and beyond just, hey, here's this character that you like. And so, yeah, we're getting pulled right along through it, through all the scenes. And each one has a reward for you.
Right. Now, what apparently Tony is doing is cutting into a transmission line. This is an HVDC transmission line. They run under the water. It's a high voltage direct current transmission line. He's cutting the shell of it off, I guess we'll just say. My assumption is electricity, water, you don't want to do this. You want to keep it dry. I'm assuming that's kind of what the pipe is doing, is keeping the wires dry from the water, which I'm assuming he's now flooding with as he cuts into it. I know it's Tony Stark. I know he kind of has his view of the world.
He has that funky thing, right, that goes on it, which is cool. It looks cool, but did he have to pick right there under the ocean to cut that wire? Like, it does hit land at some point.
Right.
I guess he figures no one will steal it if it's underwater.
Maybe the thing, evaporates all the water that just got into the pipe. Like, I don't know, but it did strike me odd that this is the way that Tony has decided to do this. I'm going to cut into this line and basically cut my new tower from this power grid.
Yes.
And which seems like a weird way to do it. Like, how is he? I mean, obviously this power grid is not just funneling into his building.
No, why isn't he in the basement of his building, cutting the cord there of his building?
This is very much in keeping with Tony's character.
Yeah.
It's like, trust me, you guys are going to love this, and if you hate it, I'll fix it, whatever.
And where's the power coming from? Jersey? Like, is that what he's doing? Like, is it all coming from some plant in Hoboken, and he has to cut it from there? Because it just seems like a really strange thing. Now, okay, so the utility of the effects sequence here is cool. I do love the fact that we open with Tony in the suit underwater. That is a new thing. I feel like that's an interesting way to introduce Tony. It is great to show that his energy beams and all the stuff still works underwater. Everything's great. And the fact that to the suit, water is equivalent to air. Like, he can thrust around and do all the stuff that he needs to do. And the launch from the surface of the water, I think, is really cool next to the boat. It's all cool. It's very cool. Just don't stop and think about it, as with several things in this movie. Don't stop and think about what his motivation here, because it's weird.
Well, I think what they did is establish in canon that in MCU Earth, power lines are full of water.
Yes. Yeah.
So really, he's not doing anything to the line.
It's a little bit of world building we don't talk about very much.
Right.
Well, now, one more practical thing, or one more effects, honorable mention for the effects, is that not only do we get the launch out of the surface of the water, which is cool, but we also get the hero fly through of Manhattan, which is great. I love it as much as I love, the Spidey sequences swinging through Manhattan. And we get to see the tower. We get to see Stark Tower, which I think is really cool. Do you think that there was like some sort of bid, or did MetLife just not pay enough to stay in the movie to have their building replaced? Because you're looking at the skyline, you're like, where would they put that building? It's not like they didn't just invent the Stark Tower there. They replaced a building. And I think that's hysterical. Like, what does an occupant of MetLife think of this movie?
Well, I think that in order to get that shot where you're looking down that street, like with like in between the skyscrapers, and it ends at Stark Tower, that a real building had to go. So
Because what are they? They're flying up. He's flying up Park Avenue. Is that what it looks like?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a little farther down in the minute, but yeah, we'll talk about that now. But then we'll
Okay.
backtrack a little bit.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
but you're right.
I just get excited about stuff.
I know you do. It's okay. That's fine. At that point, you're right. Because I definitely want to talk about some of his navigation because
Yes.
he's flying up Park Avenue directly toward the MetLife. This is up in Midtown Manhattan. Now, I did have this to say. This is from the Art of Avengers book, and it was James Chinland who had this to say about it, because the whole thing was they wanted to actually replace the MetLife building. And so the idea was what he said, quote, "The Stark Tower was the ultimate representation of this idea, where Tony Stark bought the iconic MetLife building, formerly the Pan Am building, and ripped off the top, adding his own piece of parasitic architecture to the top." Which is fantastic. The height of arrogance and the essence of Stark. As a production designer, this was the most fun set by far for me, having grown up in New York and looking at that building every day for my whole life. To be able to affect its history forever was an amazing opportunity. In choosing the MetLife location, we are also recognizing the rich topography of the streets below, which is a unique arrangement in New York, with the viaduct over 42nd Street and the tunnels behind Grand Central Terminal, not to mention Grand Central Station itself, the ultimate conflagration of rich histories and futuristic ideas. So apparently a lot of thought went into picking this particular building, and I love in canon, in universe, Tony actually bought the MetLife building specifically to do this. Just makes me laugh.
It's perfect. It is really perfect. And you can see it too. Like, I know you're looking at that book, but I'm just scrubbing through close-up images of the, you can see the nuance of the MetLife sort of facade and the shape it doesn't look like that, but you can kind of see where he cleaved off part of it and put his own touch on top. It's fantastic. It's really
very
fantastic.
funny.
I love it.
it does make a kind of sense that he would want the former Pan Am building as well. For some reason, that seems uniquely appropriate.
Yeah,
exactly.
sure.
Right. So funny. And what I love about this also is, per the comic book history of the character, this is who the character was from New York instead of the West Coast. And here he is kind of establishing roots in New York. So I like that there is this sense of bringing him over to this side of the country.
Truly.
All right. Now I want to back up a little bit because we jumped all the way to that end. So first, when we see him pop up, first of all, we haven't even said this is the Mark VI armor again, which we saw at the end of Iron Man 2 after he got himself all sorted out with his energy issues and is all healed up. It's the same armor. And at this particular point, what he does, he pops out of the New York Bay. There's a tugboat going by, which I don't know. It makes me laugh a lot that there's a tugboat. It's night. You can't quite see that it's Iron Man. When I was like, do these people think like a missile just launched out of the bay? Like, what are they thinking when they see this thing coming out? It makes me laugh when I see.
And I feel like had the camera lingered on that shot as Iron Man leaves, it's like it would be, the surface of the water is just filled with dead fish.
Yeah, right.
But everybody knows there are no fish in the Hudson River anymore. That'd be disgusting. They're all dead anyway. But it would have been an interesting touch.
Exactly. Right. Now, he's coming up right between Jersey and New York. Governor's Island would be just off frame right if we zoomed out a little bit more, and then Ellis Island and Statue of Liberty a little farther off to the left. It looks like he heads north toward Manhattan. There's Battery Park, like right there at the front, kind of where he's heading into the city as he's flying in. It looks like initially when he flies up, it looks like he goes up. And just we should say this is also before One World Trade Center was built, so we're not seeing that in the skyline here. But as he flies up, it looks like he goes up Broadway, and I guess they're doing a lot of, we cut into the HUD a lot, and we're seeing conversation between him and Pepper through this scene. So he may be making some left and right turns for some reason as he's flying, but largely, if you go up Broadway from this point in New York and you fly up, you're generally kind of almost flying straight up toward where the MetLife building is. And there is a point in this minute here where he makes a hard, like 90-degree left up Park Avenue to get to the tower. And it's like, when would he have actually, like, he would have to have been doing some crazy zigzags through the city in order to ever have to do that from where he's flying. So just pointing out in the scope of logistics, there is some wonkiness as far as the way he did that. My only guess is that they decided we really want to see him bank left up Park Avenue specifically to kind of give us that reveal. That's the only reason that it really makes any sense in context of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I think visually it works. It also gives him time to have his conversation. And it's more interesting than having him just fly in a straight line. I think to see him do some maneuvers. You get to do the reveal of the street that culminates at Stark Tower, if I'm recalling how the shot worked. It's an alternate world, so maybe the streets are a little bit rearranged.
That could be.
Yeah. But this, I will say, I want to tie this back to the first few seconds of the clip, because this was why I chose these two clips, because I love, again, the contrast of Cap's world and Tony's world. We went very quickly from a very old school looking boxing ring, with earth tones and cotton and, very, very, down home fabrics and things and old style military and all of that. And now we suddenly switch over to high tech, billionaire playboy, glitz, glamour, media. These two, I love how they show these two guys could not be more different. And I love the contrast between them. And again, it goes back to what I talked about in previous minutes, that I love that, finally, this movie proved, you can have these two worlds in the same movie, and if you do it right, it works beautifully. The contrast is interesting if you do it right.
For sure. And not only that, I think this movie sets up and earns a relationship that's worth paying off in Civil War. Right? Like this has to work. This universe has to work. And I think the movie successfully demonstrates it, or else who would care about having these two guys go at each other physically? Because they've already we already know that they are a battle of wit and will away from going to blows anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. In the HUD, it's always fun seeing the HUD and seeing how they're modifying it and stuff. We got, Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow popping up. And then we also see kind of a CG rendering of Stark Tower as the power. And we kind of get a sense of the power being diverted away from it. And you can also see the arc reactor. And it looks like it's horizontal underneath Stark Tower. And I thought that was just an interesting way to kind of design it. But it's nice to see that they thought about that and they let us have a very brief glimpse of it. But it is there.
Yeah. Little Easter eggs on the HUDs are always fun to pause and just look at all the little elements they throw on there.
Yeah. Absolutely. The only other note I have, I got a couple last little notes, but for people who are paying attention, as you kind of see the tower light up and you see the Stark written across the top, lit up there, that A might look familiar. We might have seen that very A in the title sequence, or in the title when the title of the film popped up. It's the what is the font again, Pete?
Bank Gothic.
Bank Gothic. And of course, they've extended
a much
the
maligned
leg of the A.
typeface for titles. Much maligned, as we have learned.
Is the Bank Gothic K that stupid with a weird gap in its the leg?
No, because this isn't the rest of the font on the building is a super bastardized, like half breed between the Avengers font and Bank Gothic. The title is different, but you're right. The A is what ties the monstrosity of typefaces together.
Yeah. Although if we're going to go most hated movie font, I'd have to say probably from the Avatar posters, the sort of papyrus,
sort of.
That has to be the I would say the most hated of all.
Yes. No, I think you're exactly right. I think actually that's called sort of papyrus.otf in my font library.
Yeah, they already overused it once just by putting it in Serenity. It's just like, okay, I've already seen that font enough. I don't need it in any more films.
Yeah.
The last little note I had here is that, I love, we don't get the whole joke here, but I do like, we get at the very end of this minute, Tony, when Pepper says, how does it look? And he says, like Christmas. And I was like, weirdly, that's a nice little nod to Iron Man 3, which obviously they weren't planning, but I like that we have like this Christmas connection between that line here and then, of course, the next film taking place around Christmas.
And does that imply that he feels like he's the star at the top of the tree when they light up the the building?
He may think that, but he doesn't realize that there's going to be a giant blue beam, which is actually the star later in the film.
Yeah.
It's such a great, like, I know we're going to talk more about this, and unfortunately Ryan's not going to be here because the monstrosity as it erupts from the MetLife Foundation at the very top with the Stark and everything, and he lands on that pad, and eventually he's going to it snows in New York. Like, there's a lot of exposed openness at the top that looks so cool right now. But
Pete,
it doesn't actually look great at Christmas.
Tony doesn't think about water. He's cutting into a pipe under the ocean with electric lines in it.
Andy, I really appreciate you bringing that back around because you're absolutely right. Already forgotten that Tony doesn't need to think about water.
That's right. It's only alcohol.
He'd probably just continuously fire some kind of beam out of the roof to melt all the snow.
It is, that's right. That's right.
People everyone would like shake their fists at Tony all winter, like, he melts all the snow and turns into ice when it falls to the street.
Right. It's constant ice chunks just constantly falling off of Stark Tower.
I hate these billionaires that move in with their power suits.
That's what we need. We need a Marvel one-shot detailing some of the life of the people who kind of constantly are walking up and down the street around Stark Tower complaining about all they have to deal with Stark. Like there's broken windows falling, pieces shattering on the street one day and equipment falling another.
In the summer, that's a reflective building. I'll bet people's like cars are melting from sun that's reflecting onto the street below.
He'll pay for him.
Tony's the worst.
Tony's the worst.
All right. Well, this seems like a great place to enter conversation today. Ryan, when are you back next? We have you for one more minute slated a little farther down the season. When is that?
Oh,
do you remember?
Boy. Nope.
Okay.
I don't remember which minute. I chose. There were so many good ones.
Minute 60. Okay, I'm going to tell you right
60.
now. Minute 60 is... it's actually... they're on the helicarrier. Captain America walks in, and then it's the scene with Tony and Bruce talking.
Oh, nice. So I already have alluded to one of my other favorite scenes.
Man, you really locked them in, man.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
All my favorite character moments and things. So yeah, I'll be really excited to talk about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. Before you go today, though, remind everybody again one last time this week about your books and where they can look for them.
Sure, yeah. So I have a time travel mystery series called the Time Shift Trilogy. First one is The Year of Lightning. Those are available anywhere, easiest on Amazon because they've been out for a little while. I have a brand new book called This Last Adventure that is available, anywhere books are sold, your favorite bookstore. If it's not on the shelf, they can order it for you.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have those links in the show notes. And remember, if you don't see it in your podcatcher, just go to our website, marvelmovieminute.com. You can learn more about the show, all the back episodes from all of our previous seasons, find out about our membership, all that good stuff. And we'll be back tomorrow to close out the week with Minute 25. So thanks as always, Pete.
Oh, 25, Andy. You know that. Pepper Potts, communications expert, PR savant, engineering mastermind, and paramour.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.